Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. To my right here is my buddy, Shadow the Night Owl. He is the spirit animal and the mascot of the channel. Today, we're going to dive into the Lindsay Clancy case, and we're going to see what Ashley Banfield has to say about it in her reporting. But this is our first step into the case to learn about what is it? What happened here? Is it postpartum? Is it something worse? A combination of things? Over-medicated? Which one is it? I'm not sure. I haven't made up my mind yet, but as I listen to all of the facts and go over the case, maybe I will develop an opinion as we go on. Hello there, Bethany. How are you? As everyone comes in here, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Smash that like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you're not already. Come in and say hello to the flock of black sheep because we have an awesome and supportive community here. As always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. We just finished up our members only live stream a little bit ago. I do those once a week. That was a fun time as always. So we have Wendy and Teresa and Reagan and Laura. Laura was in the live chat or the members only stream. Hello there, Teresa. Wendy was too, which is cool. Not Bethany says she's not having a good day, but she got her car back. It was a glitch software. Well, that part's good. Thank you, Wow. Remember to like the video, folks. Reagan or Regina, Shadow and I are doing swell. We're interested about this case here to see what we think. Is it just a postpartum psychosis? Or is this woman a psychopath? I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how it unfolds here. But without further delay, let's jump in. Yeah, the members only lives are a grand old time, aren't they, Laura? That's where we get personal. We let our hair down a little bit, talk about the things that are not appropriate to be talked about in a regular stream. Dana, welcome back. Glad to have you here. Make sure you like the video on your way back in. We're watching this Ashley Banfield video about the Lindsay Clancy case. And, you know, I might, tomorrow night, maybe we'll go over Nolan Wells. We'll see, because I see a lot of videos out there about Nolan Wells. That case just hasn't called to me. But that doesn't mean it's not worthy of attention. Hello there, Dee. Welcome.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Banfield and this is Drop Dead Serious. The murder trial of 35-year-old Lindsay Clancy is now underway, and it has been more than 3 years now since she allegedly strangled her 3 young children with exercise bands. Police say it happened in the basement of their massive.
So she strangled 3 children, 3 of her children with exercise bands. And just by looking at her, you wouldn't really think it, would you? A pretty woman. I don't really, do you see the crazy in her eye? It doesn't jump out at me. What do you think though, chap?
Massachusetts home. The prosecutors, they say that Lindsay sent her husband, Patrick, out to pick up some medication and some takeout. That she carefully calculated just how long it would take him to do those errands. And that she used that window of time to kill her 5-year-old named Cora, her 3-year-old named Dawson, and her 8-month-old Callan. They say she then cut her wrists and her neck before jumping from a second-story window, presumably to take her own life after allegedly murdering her own 3 children. So there is no question. This is not a whodunit, okay? And we have a lot of these. We have a, wow, what a mystery. I wonder if she really did it. This is not one of those. No, this is not a whodunit. There's no question. Lindsay killed those kids, and her attorneys are prepared to acknowledge that in court. Okay, you got me. It's me.
And so right off the bat, it's just also so scary to me that if she is going to get insanity, And, the postpartum plus medication or whatever it is, it's just a scary thought that that can happen. But let's see. Let's see if we can put the pieces of the puzzle together here.
What the jury is going to have to decide, though, is whether this was a calculated triple murder, right? Committed by a mom who knew exactly what she was doing. Or if that mom, Lindsay, was suffering from some sort of catastrophic postpartum psychiatric episode, illness, whatever you want to call it, after months and months of asking for help.
So what Dr. Jared would say is, why the hell were they not giving her like a mood stabilizer / antipsychotic? And you don't need a lot of them, just like one or two a lot of times. But I heard somewhere she was taking 13 different medicines. It just seems excessive. I mean, you'd give someone Zyprexa, Seroquel, lithium, Lamictal, something. Often that's enough to take it away, but we'll see. I don't want to get ahead of myself.
And also warning her doctors that she was getting worse. This sounds like something I have done before. Andrea Yates. It's like deja vu all over again. And I'm getting to that. So from the outside, the Clancys, they looked as though they had built such a life, right? A beautiful home and life and world and kids and family in Duxbury, an affluent coastal community. It's about 30 miles south of Boston. They took their children boating and skiing, and they spent time at Duxbury Beach, and they filled their mornings with books and cuddling on the couch and playing with toys. I mean, what honestly could anyone have ever imagined would or could go wrong with a family that looked like that? That, as you know, as I know, as everybody now knows, looks can be deceiving. So can social media, images, stories, all of that.
So I guess also my question would be, Laura, so she's asking for help so many times. What was her specific complaint? I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm depressed. I have anxiety. Or what was the specific complaint? Maybe we'll hear that in this video, but do you know?
Because behind that picture of the happy, loving young family, Lindsay's mental health was really going downhill. Her defense attorney says that she became psychotic and that she was not criminally responsible when she killed her own 3 kids. I know what you're saying. You're probably saying, shut the fuck up. But criminal code is very specific when it comes to this stuff. And there are all sorts of reasons that are pretty arcane, right? Really deep and confusing and layered. And when it comes to mental health and mens rea, right? Your guilty intent. And postpartum was something that nobody ever gave a shit about and struggled mightily with Andrea Yates, and then suddenly started to not struggle so much with it. So back to her case.
So here's the other thing though, Laura, right? If someone's saying that and the meds are not working, she's saying she wants to harm her kids. Don't then you have to remove the kids from the situation? If the woman thinks it's that likely she'll harm herself or others, I mean, is she fit to be parenting in that case? Just throwing that out there.
Prosecutors say that the evidence is going to show planning. It's going to show deliberation. It's going to show a woman who understood exactly what she was doing, not somebody who couldn't form any kind of criminal or guilty intent. The jury's decision could mean the difference between life in prison, no parole.
That's the other thing though, right? If she knew this and she didn't want her kids harmed, don't you think she would say like, hey, grandmom, granddad, or something? Husband's family, someone should take them while I get my mental health under control, or get hospitalized maybe. I'm just throwing out options. And of course, hindsight's 2020 now, right? And now it seems clear, well, of course we should have done those things. But perhaps at the time, I don't know, maybe they weren't taking it seriously, or they thought, no, no, that can't be. She won't do that. I don't know what they thought. I don't want to lead the witness. So I don't want to, what's the word, speculate.
Or walk out the side door, not back door, not free. When you say not guilty by reason of insanity, it doesn't mean you get a free pass. Okay, over to Burger King. No, it means you get committed to a psychiatric hospital or facility and you're under lock and key and you could be there forever. It's been 3 decades since Andrea Yates has been locked away, but effectively it's supposed to be till you're.
And unfortunately, if someone's going to treatment doing these things, but they're still not okay, then you just have to remove yourself from the situation, no? Like, what others, if everything you're trying is not working, then you have to remove yourself, I think. And I don't mean end your life. I mean, just not be around them until you're mentally well. And it might sound harsh until you think about what happened instead. And you think, oh, well, that was clearly much more harsh.
Well, you know, you're leaving this courtroom. You're not going to go to prison. You're going to go somewhere where you think you can get treatment, fix what's going on, and then maybe you can return to society and not be a danger to anybody or yourself. 3 decades plus, Andrea Yates is still in that facility. And her lawyers have told me before that she didn't want to leave. Feels like she'll never want to leave, which is amazing. Blows my mind. But anyway, in this episode, I'm going to go through everything that happened inside the Clancy's home. We're going to go over all the warnings, the red flags, everything that was happening, even the treatment that Lindsay was getting as her condition just slowly got worse and worse and worse. And then I'm going to be joined by one of the attorneys who represented, say it with me, Andrea Yates. If you're not old enough, or if you haven't seen the Andrea Yates case, Run, Don't Walk, and do a quick dive and then do a deep dive. She's a mom in Texas. She was a mom. Texas. She drowned all 5 of her kids sequentially, one after the other, in the family bathtub. But ultimately, it was a long road. She had a jury that said, hang her, it was a death penalty case. They were giving her no pass at all. But then something weird happened. I'll tell you about it in a minute, but she got a second trial. And in the second trial, the jury said, oh yeah, this lady, not responsible, not guilty by reason of insanity, right? I'm going to examine the unbelievably striking similarities between these 2 cases. And then also the critical differences, because there are many. And those differences could really change things up for Lindsay Clancy and her fate. But the Andrea Yates pathway is palpable and it looms huge over this case. So I can't wait to talk to her lawyer because I think, been through some things. First, though, let me walk you through this. January 24th, 2023. Day was like kind of normal. Actually, the prosecutors say that it was actually really ordinary. Lindsay took her 5-year-old little one, Cora, to a pediatric appointment. She communicated with her relatives. She sent family members some photographs of the kids building a snowman, right? Normal day. Prosecutors say nobody described Lindsay as confused or detached or psychotic on that day. She wasn't stumbling through any of her conversations. Her communications were clear, concise, normal. She was not behaving, in their words, like a zombie. As far as the people around her could see, there was no immediate indication.
What do we have here? Thank you very much for this. Wow. Shadow and I say thank you. Look up the woman who just got insanity from COVID for her unaliving of her child so can compare. What's her name, Well? She got insanity because of COVID or the shot? That is wild. Thank you very much for the super chat. Wow. Shadow and I really appreciate it. Soy-free hootie snacks for Shadow. And like I said, I'm open on this case here. And if you're the husband of Lindsay, I feel like I don't think they wanted to think the worst. They thought, oh, you're okay, you're struggling, but I guess they thought it wasn't that bad or it wouldn't get that bad or something, or they minimized it. I don't know. We'll have to see. Nanny Goat, what is shaking, Nanny Goat?
That she was preparing to or even capable of hurting, let alone killing her own 3 kids. So fast forward a little to the evening, Lindsay asked her husband, Patrick, to leave the house and go and pick up some medicine for one of the kids at CVS. And then that wasn't it. She said, by the way, while you're out there, can you collect a takeout order from 3V, a restaurant in Plymouth? Prosecutors say that the assignment that Patrick got, the errands he was sent to run, they were all part of a plan, of a premeditated, murderous tragedy, but a plan. And they allege that Lindsay actually researched how long all that would take, right? How long was the trip to the restaurant going to take? How long was the trip, to get the medicine going to take? Put that all together, give yourself a window, right? The prosecutors even say she picked a location for the 3V, the restaurant, for the takeout, in a location that was so far away that it would...
Oh, we got another super chat here with information again from Wow. Thank you very much, Wow. Precious Bland in Florida. We'll have to keep our eyes on that then. Precious Bland in Florida. Thank you for doing that digging for me, Wow. Shadow and I appreciate it. We also appreciate the super chat very much. For everyone else, likes are free. So spank that like button and leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Say hello to the flock of black sheep if you're lurking. You have an awesome and amazing and encouraging and supportive community here. A lot of people report that they fit in here and they didn't really fit in other places. I go live. I'm back to going live 5 or 6 nights a week again, by the way. Usually in the evenings, usually between 10 and 11. But sometimes earlier. Sometimes I'll surprise people, won't I, Laura? And Shadow and I want to thank everyone for all the support that we've been getting so far. Tomorrow, I'll be interviewing Dr. Salerno and Dr. Lieberman. Dr. Lieberman is an evolutionary psychologist. We'll see how that goes. We're going over their new workbook on healing traumatic cognitive dissonance. So thank you for the super chat again. Wow.
Actually buy her more time alone with the kids away from Patrick, right? Yeah, go to that restaurant. It's further. I don't know if he questioned it, but he went. And while Patrick was gone, the prosecutors say that Lindsay took little Cora and Dawson and Callan down to the basement. They say there she used exercise resistance bands to strangle each of those 3 children. And after the attack, the prosecutors say Lindsay cut her own wrists, cut her own neck, and then went to the 2nd story, opened a bedroom window, and leapt from it, bleeding. And then Patrick got home. So just imagine that for a moment. Medicine, takeout. What the fuck? I don't think that man will ever be the same, obviously. I hope he's had counseling. He got home just after 6 o'clock at night. House was very quiet. He reportedly noticed some blood, saw the open window, and then saw Lindsay seriously injured outside, but not dead. So he gets home, and it's not the front. He doesn't see this in the front. It's not the first thing he sees when he, drives into the driveway, parks. He has to discover this. with little clues along the way inside, like, what's going on? Where is everybody? Where are the kids? Why no noise?
So I'm going to give you a little AI reading from what Wow was saying. Precious Bland was found not guilty by reason of insanity in June 2026 for the 2021 drowning of her 15-month-old daughter and the stabbings of her husband and teenage daughter. After her defense successfully argued she suffered a COVID-19 induced psychotic break. Oh my God. That doesn't sound right. Detailed coverage and case records can be reviewed on NBC Miami and CBS News Miami. Oh my goodness. I can't believe that worked. Can you? Goodness gracious. No institutionalization. In July 2026, the judge ruled that Bland would not be confined to a mental hospital, as psychologists testified she did not require inpatient care. Conditions. She was released under specific terms, including living with her sister, taking prescribed medications, and continuing psychotherapy through the Veterans Affairs Health System. Wow. Holy mackerel. I'll have to take a look at that one. I don't know how the hell they proved it. That's a good defense attorney. Considering, now granted, I thought you were going to say a jab insanity. But considering how many people got both, COVID or the jab, it's like, well, how many in cases of insanity from COVID were there? I don't know. But thank you very much, Wow, for bringing that to my attention. That is wild.
You know what it's like. A house full of 3 kids at 6 o'clock at night who haven't had dinner yet. Chaos. Not for Patrick. Silence. And a very cold open window. And Lindsay down below, not dead. According to the prosecutors, Patrick asked Lindsay, where are the children? While he was on the phone with 911, where are the kids? And she reportedly directed him to the basement. And that's where Patrick went. And that's what Patrick saw.
Great question, Dee. Now we're talking about Precious Bland again. Precious Bland was against the C-19 vaccine, warning family members and neighbors that it was the mark of the devil. Court records and reports on her case from outlets like the Miami Herald note that she experienced a severe psychotic episode tied to contracting C-19 itself rather than being vaccinated. And then they have beliefs and delusions. And under belief and delusions, the first one, anti-vaccine stance. Yours truly is not the biggest fan of vaccines either. Went door to door to her neighbors to warn them not. She went door to door to her neighbors to warn them not to get the COVID vaccine because it was the mark of the devil, according to the Miami Herald. So she was like a Jehovah's Witness for anti-vaccine. Man, she could go get a freaking conservative pundit spot. C-19 psychosis. Court testimony showed she suffered from delusions that COVID is going to kill us all. That's a fascinating case. I don't know why it's not gotten more attention.
All 3 kids, unconscious, exercise bands still around or near their necks. He attempted CPR, obviously, while begging the kids to breathe. Just imagine this. 3 kids, who do you help first? What do you do first? Cora and Dawson were transported to a hospital. They were pronounced dead that very evening. Callan was flown to Boston Children's Hospital, and he remained alive for 3 days. Callan was a little fighter, but he didn't make it. And on January 27th, he was pronounced dead. Once again, imagine those minutes, those hours, those days, those nights for Patrick. Medical examiner determined that Cora and Dawson died from asphyxia, obviously, and that Callan died from complications from asphyxia. Again, it's not a whodunit. Is it a whydunit? I mean, yeah. You kind of know why, but I guess the jury's going to have to determine the level of the why. And then there's Lindsay, right? Surviving the cuts to her wrists, the cuts to her neck, the fall from the second-story window. But she didn't come out completely unscathed. Her spinal cord was severely damaged. Her attorney said that she is now paralyzed from approximately the sternum down. She now uses a wheelchair and has remained hospitalized and under constant supervision. I mean, yeah, at the least, right? But how did Lindsay Clancy get to?
I don't know. She's got that look about her now. I don't know what the look was before. Kind of reminds me of Shutter Island. Have you all seen Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio? It's basically what his wife did in the movie. Drowned, I think, their 2 children.
That point. I mean, one minute you're building a snowman and sending out sweet messages and photos to your family and friends and telling your husband to go get dinner. And then this horror show. So Lindsay built a career, believe it or not, caring for women and babies. I know you can't write this. You can't. So this was her job. She cared for women and babies at Massachusetts General Hospital. She was a labor and delivery nurse, and she did that for about 9 years. I'll take all the time you need to process it. I know. When I first found that out, I thought, typo? Many typos? Labor and delivery nurse. And in December...
Oh, that's what she looks like in that picture. I just reminded me. Has anyone seen The Fourth Kind? Remember how that woman looked in the end at the Fourth Kind? That's how she looks in that wheelchair to me. So look up some pictures of the woman at the end of The Fourth Kind, and she has that same kind of vacant expression, vacant stare. Now, some of that for Lindsay here could be explained probably by maybe the meds that she's on, or coming to realize what she did. Like, I don't know. I have no idea where her mental state is now. She's a very pretty woman, though. Look at her.
November of 2016, she married Patrick Clancy. Their daughter, Cora, was born a year later in December of 2017. Their son, Dawson, followed in September of 2019. And then the baby, the little one.
Oh, cute little baby. And what do we have here, says Shadow? Laura has gifted 5 the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect memberships. Thank you so much, Laura. And the rest of the flock of the black sheep will appreciate this too. We'll have to see who the YouTube Lords of Random decide get it. We can take a look at that. But it's not up to me, unfortunately. But it's up to the YouTube Lords of Random. We'll see who they decide. Shadow and I thank you again, Laura.
Callan, the youngest, he was born in May of 2022. But after Callan was born, something began to change. Patrick says that Lindsay had experienced some anxiety following the births of Cora and Dawson, the 2 older ones, and that after Dawson was born, she reportedly managed those symptoms, right? She used exercise, she used medication, she got therapy. But when Callan was born, something was different. It was not the same as when the 2 older kids were born. And by the end of September 2022, that's about 4 months after little Callan was born, Lindsay was preparing to go back to work. And at the same time, she was going through a lot of anxiety, like significant anxiety. So she sought out help from 2 psychiatrists, not just 1, 2. She was initially diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, Lots of people have that. Super commonplace, easily manageable, right? Medication therapies, lots of people. But over the next several months, Lindsay was prescribed a slew of psychiatric medications. Her attorney said that she was prescribed 13 different drugs.
Oh, we're going to take a look at this screen here. I know some of these. But Laura also just sent me who got the memberships, so we'll take a look at that too. So, ICIMI official, Country X Angel 62, All Sane, KB, and the Rube 136, KB_413. Honestly, I don't know who they are. But maybe they'll take it as a sign to come join the flock of black sheep. And that's the advantage, Laura, right? We're putting good vibes into the universe, and maybe they'll come by. So thank you again, Laura. Now let's take a look at Lindsay's medicine here. Ambien. Ambien to sleep medication. Clozapine. Benzodiazepine. GABA A agonist. Valium. Benzodiazepine. Prozac. Antidepressant. Lamictal. Mood stabilizer. Ativan. Another benzo. Remeron. I forget what that is. Seroquel. Antipsychotic. Trazodone for sleep. Why would you take trazodone and Ambien? Zoloft, another antidepressant. And I don't know Elavil. Buspirone, I'm not sure. So I looked that up before I say. Remeron I've heard of, but I don't remember what it is. But Shadow and I do know our medicines, but let's see. But it just seems there's no need to be taking 3 benzos. That seems out of control. And then Ambien and Trazodone both? Like, what? And the dosages of these matter too, by the way. Are they as needed or what? Remeron is the brand name for mirtazapine, an atypical antidepressant commonly described for major depressive disorder, anxiety off-label, insomnia off-label, poor appetite, or unintended weight loss. Key things to know: it works differently from SSRIs. It increases norepinephrine and serotonin activity by blocking certain receptors. It's classified as a noradrenergic and specific serotonergic antidepressant. Interesting. So she's on like double antidepressants, triple, Zoloft and Prozac and that. So 3 antidepressants. What? Elavil? What's Elavil? Another antidepressant. Buspirone? No. Brand name for Buspar, discontinued in the US but available as a generic, is an anti-anxiety medication used to treat generalized anxiety disorder. All right, that makes sense. Atarax. A first-generation antihistamine that's also used to treat anxiety, especially short-term anxiety, itching and allergic reactions, insomnia, nausea, sedation. Blocks histamine receptors, H1. Oh, my Lord. So I don't know. This just seems like too much. This seems like too much here. What the heck's going on? Oh, I missed something here. Laura gifted 5 more Wizard of Radical Self-Respect memberships. Thank you so much, Laura. We'll have to see who the Lords of YouTube Random decide. This is how I see it, Laura. I think The YouTube lords of random will decide this person needs a little bit of the flock of black sheep in your life. Or maybe they need some of the wizard's expertise or some of the interviews here or something. That's how I choose to see it. And then the rest of it, it's up to them. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So let's see. They should get these in their email, and let's see what happens. But thank you very much, Laura. Shadow says thank you too. But I don't know. What do you all think about these medicines here? I think there's too many for the same things. Like, okay, take benzo, but why do you need 3 benzos? That's confusing to me. Why do you need 3 antidepressants? Why do you need 3 sleep medications? Like, was she getting all of these from the same doctor, or was she doctor shopping? I mean, that's a huge variable, is it not? Oh, so it's 2 doctors, Butterfly? Yeah, they're supposed to be putting this stuff in a database, I think. Or I'm not sure if that's against HIPAA or not. No, it can't be if it's amongst the professionals. But was she on all of them at the same time? That is not specified. That is the key question, isn't it, Laura? I'm curious. Bethany got one. Bethany got a membership. You hear that, Bethany? YouTube Lords of Random decided. And Janine, which is awesome. Right on. So glad. Now, I called Janine Jane. I was almost confused there. But Jane, I'm very glad you got one. Right on. Right on.
Just between October 22 and January 23. That's just a couple months, right? Including medications to treat anxiety, depression, insomnia, and then a couple of other psychiatric symptoms. In November of 2022, Lindsay reportedly went to an emergency room and said that she was afraid that something terrible might happen. How's that for announcing, help me, something's terribly wrong, I have 3 small children, help, like really help? December 5th, Lindsay contacted Aspire Crisis Support after experiencing intrusive thoughts about wanting to die. She reportedly told the providers that she believed her worsening symptoms were connected to medications that she'd been prescribed. 4 days after that, December 9th, Patrick now calls one of Lindsay's providers, asks for help, describes the situation as urgent, and reported that his wife was experiencing panic and suicidal thoughts. So this is kind of an avalanche of like red flags and warning signs. Then came December 20th. Lindsay entered a postpartum day treatment program at Women and Infants Hospital. That's in Rhode Island. And according to Patrick, program believed that Lindsay might have been misdiagnosed and overmedicated. And they determined that the day program actually wasn't good enough. It wasn't appropriate for.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but Dr. Jared would say 1 benzo at a time, 1 sleep medication at a time, 1 antidepressant at a time, and generally 1 antipsychotic at a time, for the most part. I mean, I've seen people take an antidepressant with a mood stabilizer because people that are bipolar 1 or bipolar 2, the antidepressants can put them into a manic episode or make them rapid cycle. So they need the antipsychotic or a mood stabilizer to prevent that from happening. But I don't know. There's like 2 benzos? Like 3? That's wild.
For the level of need that this woman had. They said, I think you're in the wrong place and I think you got the wrong stuff. The wrong meds, the wrong prescriptions, the wrong treatment, the wrong diagnoses. Bigger issue. Okay. So by the end of December, then Lindsay reportedly insisted that she had to go to the hospital, like needed to be hospitalized. This woman is doing everything to warn everybody around her, seek the appropriate help, and then like asked to be committed. She told Patrick, and here's a quote, "I have thoughts of wanting to die and I feel numb to them." Police records indicate that she also disclosed unwanted thoughts about, say it with me, harming the children. And those thoughts were reportedly described as fleeting. And Lindsay denied having a plan or an intention to act on any of those thoughts. Skip ahead to January 1, 2023. Now, Lindsay voluntarily admitted herself to McLean Hospital because of suicidal ideation. She remained there for about 5 days. Hospitalization is likely to become one of the most important parts of the trial because prosecution and defense see it very, very differently. And you might. Here's why. The defense says that Lindsay was desperately trying to get help while her psychiatric condition continued to just atrophy, deteriorate, fall off a cliff. They argue that the people responsible for treating her failed her miserably. They failed to recognize the severity of what was happening to Lindsay, how serious this was, what the implications could be. But prosecutors say that Lindsay was evaluated at one of the country's most respected psychiatric hospitals and was not diagnosed with postpartum psychosis. They say she appeared to improve after her discharge. And I know what you're thinking. Even great people can do really dumb things, and even great hospitals can fuck things up royally. And they have. I mean, why would insurance rates be so high for malpractice if great doctors and hospitals didn't have the occasional, or maybe not even the occasional, lapse in judgment, practice, treatment, and the like? So that's going to be an interesting debate for the jury, right? Because, what are their experiences, right? What's reasonable to them in their worlds? And one guy may not be like the other guy, but it only takes one. Look, I am not going to lie. I see both sides of this case because I've been through them. I absolutely see both sides of this case, but I am dying to know how you feel. Comment, tell me, yeah, no, jail, hospital, like you have to have some personal experiences in your life that will inform how you weigh in on this particular case. So in the weeks that followed, Lindsay continued to track her medications, her moods, her sleep, her symptoms, and the prosecutors say those notes indicate that she was actually on the mend. She was doing better. And in one particular phone entry that was written the day before the killings, she reportedly referred to experiencing a touch of postpartum anxiety, anxiety. And the defense is expected to argue that that one phrase cannot be separated from the months of insomnia, the panic, the suicidal thoughts, the medication changes, the repeated attempts to obtain treatment, those intrusive thoughts about harming herself, even the kids. Defense says it's all part of one big package. Reared its ugly head. Patrick reportedly asked Lindsay whether she was still experiencing suicidal thoughts and whether she was having thoughts about harming their 3 kids. And he told investigators that Lindsay said no. That's important. But again, mental health isn't perfect. It can be cyclical. It can just ram itself through your mind at the most inopportune times. Often does. You can't gauge it or schedule it, right? You can be great one day, 1 hour, and be absolutely, off the rails another. So I kind of think there's going to be a lot of experts in this trial. So January 23rd, Lindsay attended what would become her final psychiatric appointment, although I don't know if at the time they thought it was the final one. Who knows if anyone, including Lindsay, would know what the next few days would entail. Because the following day, Cora and Dawson were dead, and Callan was fighting for his life at Boston Children's before eventually succumbing to his injuries and dying. And 4 days after the attack, Patrick did something many people struggle to understand.
Well, the reason I know so much about medications is one, they used to put me on those things 20 years ago, antipsychotics and all of them, some of the antidepressants. And then in my mid to late 20s, when I was struggling with my mental health, I was obsessed with finding solutions. And in the course of finding solutions, I would look up prescription medications that would help, etc. And in the course of doing this, I learned a lot about them. Now, me personally, I found a natural route that worked for me. But Shadow and I always say, whatever works for you is what you should do. If supplements help you, great. If prescription medication helps you, great. Shadow and I are not here to judge that. We will also say, though, sleep, diet, and exercise, some goals, and some good relationships can usually help most people as well. It might not be enough, mind you, but in addition to supplements, in addition to prescription medications, those things are also important. So those are Shadow and I's thoughts. Now let's see what her husband has to say here, according to Ashley.
He publicly forgave his wife. I'm with you. I have a really tough time understanding.
What do we have here? Says, women like that. 400 gems eagle. I don't know what that really is, but Shadow and I are really grateful for the support, because I do think it's support. It'll help Shadow get the soy-free hootie snacks, because he is very hormone and testosterone conscious after all. As we all should be in this era of endocrine disruptors. So thank you very much, women like that. Shadow and I appreciate it. And that is true too, Truth Seeker. We do not discriminate. If people want to mix their supplements and prescription drugs, that's totally fine. As long as you ask your doctor about it first, because there can be sometimes interactions between prescription drugs and supplements. As someone said today, I forget who, but yeah, you're not, because you can get serotonin syndrome if you take too many antidepressants or take something like SAMe with an antidepressant. That wouldn't be good.
That kind of charity, that kind of grace, I don't think I have it. Honestly, I can't imagine what this man went through in those minutes, hours, days of the worst horror movie coming alive in front of him. But he did, just a couple of days after all of it. His statement said that the real Lindsay was generously loving and caring towards him and their 3 kids, their families, her friends, her patients. He said their marriage was wonderful and had grown stronger as her condition rapidly worsened. He asked the public to find it within themselves to forgive her as he had. And Patrick's position.
So Patrick says he forgives her after she killed their 3 children. That's a lot. That's a lot to do. I don't know how many people would truthfully be able to do that. My goodness gracious. But hey, more power to him, I guess, if he's being genuine. I don't know why he would. Well, maybe he's just saying it for the cameras. I don't know. But Nanny Goat has a good suggestion here. Laura, I soak my feet or have a bath with magnesium every night. The skin is the biggest organ, as we know, and it absorbs it faster. The benefits are amazing and immediately noticeable. I think that's a great suggestion. Nanny Goat. Shadow and I appreciate it. And so does Laura and everyone else. Right on. Laura's got all the information. She says jewels on YouTube are gifts to creators. You will see them as rubies in your studio as cash. How about that? Right on.
position, believe it or not, has not wavered. Nothing has changed. He is still right there. Day 4 after the horror that was visited upon him and his family, and now several years later, like a rock. And he's expected to testify for Lindsay. He's expected to be a defense witness. That's going to be pretty powerful, because if there is anybody you could think of who is a victim in this case, other than those 3 beautiful kids, it is the dad. You know, the way the jurors would look at it. That this guy lost everything. So traumatized. And then he comes out and supports her. That is going to weigh heavily.
An interesting thing here is, so the kids seemed young, no? And yet he had enough time to divorce and remarry. So what went on there? Seems like something happened there. Because 3 kids, I mean, that's a lot of, that's, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to divorce when you have 3 kids, right?
For them. They are going to look at that and think, what am I missing? Maybe I need to rejig how I feel about this, if they feel the other way. So about the case itself, on February 7th, 2023, Lindsay appeared via video from her hospital bed. And that is when she put in her plea, not guilty. And at that time, she was facing, and pour a drink, these are serious, 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of strangulation or...
So Laura has a demonstration here for us. 10 gems dash floating heart. Thank you very much, Laura. Shadow and I appreciate it. These are gifts and things that I guess most people don't know about. But Laura knows about them. And now I'm learning about it thanks to women like that and Laura. How about that? Still need to fill 1 juror's seat? Yeah. That's funny. We appreciate the support, no matter how big or how small, Laura. It is the thought that counts.
Suffocation and 3 counts of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. I know. How can exercise bands be considered a dangerous weapon? Anything can. This pen can be a dangerous weapon if I use it to stab you instead of write this, episode. So a dangerous weapon can be anything. You can turn anything into a dangerous weapon. The assistant DA, her name's Jennifer Sprague. She portrayed Lindsay as coherent, deliberate, calculating. Prosecutors pointed to Lindsay's decision to send Patrick to the pharmacy and then to that way off restaurant, right? The one that was further than it had to be. The time that she would have known.
Well, wait a minute. If she's sending Patrick to the pharmacy, so they were still together at the time? I guess I'm getting confused about the timeline now.
He'd be away, the fact that there were 3 kids, that they were all attacked separately. These were all the case that, the prosecutors were making. But the defense portrayed Lindsay differently, obviously. They said she was gravely ill. She was a woman whose postpartum condition had been missed, then misdiagnosed, mistreated, potentially worsened by a complicated series of meds that she may not have ever needed and would have been dangerous to take. And then came another critical and fiercely disputed piece of evidence.
Dana made Shadow and I laugh. 10 gems, happy poop. Much better than unhappy poop, right? Shadow agrees. Happy poop. You might get some unhappy poop if you have the tainted lettuce. So that was in 2023. Okay, so since all of this happened, he divorced her and remarried. That makes more sense. Yes, because this does seem like a divorceable offense. Imagine he goes into the divorce filings office. What's your reason for filing divorce? Oh, my wife just killed all 3 of our children. No big deal. It's like, wow. Big thing, right? Auntie, welcome.
just before Lindsay's arraignment, she reportedly spoke with Patrick using a cell phone of a psychologist that was retained by the defense. So defense hires a psychologist, sends that psychologist into the institution where Lindsay is, to do some pretrial work, and she gives Lindsay a phone, and Lindsay calls Patrick. The prosecutors say that Lindsay told Patrick that she had experienced a moment of psychosis and that she heard a male voice directing her to kill the children and herself because it was her last chance. Last chance. So the defense views that reported voice as evidence that Lindsay had lost touch with reality. The prosecution, they see it differently. Natch. They say the timing is the issue here, right? They say Lindsay reportedly didn't describe hearing any voices ever until after she'd begun meeting with her defense team. So, you start saying that to the jury and they'll think, well, strategy, not real strategy. Maybe. In September 2023, a Plymouth County grand jury formally indicted Lindsay on 3 counts of murder and 3 counts of strangulation, 1 for each of those beautiful little kids. The prosecutors allege that she killed Cora, Dawson, and Callan with deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity or cruelty. That gets you up there to life, no parole, right? When you get the aggravated aspects of the crime. And by December of 2024, Lindsay's attorney, Kevin Reddington, formally announced that Lindsay would pursue a lack of criminal responsibility defense. A lot of times we refer to that colloquially as an insanity defense. And sometimes not just colloquially, sometimes it's actually in the code, but you know it. Most people know it. Some people get it confused with competency. That's different. Competency is, are you even capable of getting in the courtroom and dealing with all of this? Do you even know what the heck is going on? If you are competent, you can get into that courtroom and say, I'm not guilty by reason of insanity. I didn't know right from wrong and I didn't understand the nature and consequences of my actions. That's usually the 2 prongs you've got to prove. Not easy. Under Massachusetts.
But here's the thing though, right? If you are saying, I want to harm my children, doesn't that basically say you do understand the nature and you do understand that it's wrong? Doesn't that mean that? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. But what do you think?
It's law, the prosecutors have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Lindsay was criminally responsible for this. And the jury's going to have to consider whether, because of a mental disease or defect, she lacked the substantial capacity to appreciate the criminality or the wrongfulness of her conduct, or lacked the substantial capacity to conform her behavior to the requirements of the law. And again, that's all really fancy, but if you break it down and stare at it, it kind of means, did you understand right from wrong? Did you understand the nature and consequences of what you were doing, right? And just before trial, the prosecutors decided to do something a little surprising. They dropped the 3 separate strangulation charges because they were considered duplicative of the murder charges. The same thing. So Lindsay is now standing trial on 3 counts of murder, and the judge has ruled that the jurors may be taken to the Duxbury house where the children had died. That's like the jury go see. We've seen that in a lot of trials like Murdoch. I thought we'd see a jury go see in the Idaho case until they tore the house down. He ended up pleading anyway, but I thought, well, there goes the jury go see. Not going to do that. But they could do it in this one. Usually you get on a bus. They did it in OJ. They went to OJ's house. Jurors all went to OJ's house and OJ's dream team redecorated it. It was totally different. Very race sensitive decorations in OJ's house when the jury went to his house. But these jury go-sees are very important. They give context. Sometimes there's a little detail you would never imagine that jurors get in a jury go-see. And then they hang on it like they can't get it out of their craw. But this jury is going to be allowed to also hear Patrick's 911 call, and they're going to be able to see certain photographs, including the autopsy images. That is going to be brutal because when you have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old, and they are dead bodies, jurors struggle with that. That is tough. That's the defense's worst nightmare. Yeah. Jury selection started today. It's July 20th as I'm recording this, 2026, in Plymouth Superior Court. Judge plans to seat 18 jurors. That's 12 with 6 alternates, because the trial is expected to last several weeks and involve some very complicated medical, psychiatric testimony, and you just never know. Sometimes you go through all of them. So that brings us to a case that is impossible to ignore when discussing the defense that Lindsay Clancy is preparing to present. And that case is Andrea Yates. There I was in 2001, sitting on the anchor set that Brian Williams used to sit on in the middle of the newsroom in MSNBC when I was an anchor there. And I think during commercial.
By the way, Shadow wants me to remind you all to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button and leave your DNA of choice on the like button. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do. Say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat here. You have an awesome group. As always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. And usually I go live 5 or 6 nights a week. And sometimes I'll go over true crime like tonight. Other times I will do live streams about narcissistic abuse and other psychology topics. Yesterday, we went over Candy Morris's video about being an estranged parent. She thinks going no contact is avoiding an uncomfortable conversation a lot of times. And I don't know if I agree with that, but if that intrigues you, check out that live stream from last night. And thank you very much, everyone, for all of the support that you've been giving Shadow and I so far. We are very grateful.
Break, I saw a wire cross about a woman who had drowned all 5 of her children, and I lost my shit. And I said to the control room, oh my God, breaking news, we are doing this. And for whatever reason, everybody was so busy and they didn't think it was.
What do we have here, Shadow? A super chat from Nanny Go. This is my happy place. I'm so glad I found you all. We may be far apart, but when we're here, we are together. Shadow and I think we couldn't have said it better ourselves, Nanny Goat. We thank you very much for the super chat, and I know the rest of the flock of black sheep, they feel the same. A lot of people feel the same. We only miss the people that are not here right now that share that sentiment. But we appreciate all the support for sure. Right, Nanny Goat and Wendy and Laura and Dana and Miss Amanda and Bethany? I wonder where Jackie is this evening, by the way. Hopefully she's okay. Truth Seeker, Wendy. So thank you again, Nanny Goat from the land down under.
It's going to resonate, that story. I remember just kind of shaking my head. What? Anyway, we did do the story. I was pretty.
Bethany's been a member for 2 months now. We love you too, Bethany. And if you need to get some rest, you can. We always advocate for taking care of yourself.
Insistent, very bitchy, and said, we're doing this story. What are you talking about? There's no political story. There's no any story that isn't more jaw-dropping, astounding, just an offense to every sense than this one. And thus we have the case of Andrea Yates. She drowned all 5 of her little babies in the bathtub of her home in Texas, one by one, littlest to biggest. There's so many details of this case I'll never be able to forget. For instance, the water got dirtier and dirtier as the last children were going in, and the 7-year-old, I think his name was Noah, was running for his life around the house, and she grabbed him, and he was found with fistfuls of Andrea's hair in his hands because he had seen what was happening, and he was 7. So he had some context of what was coming. Oh God, it was just one of those cases I'll just never get over. Like Lindsay Clancy, Andrea had no dispute of the physical facts of what happened. It was just all there, right? It was not a whodunit. The central issue was her mental state and whether she was legally responsible or criminally insane, right? It's very different. Listen, you can be batshit crazy and not criminally insane. Criminally insane is specific. And again, it's arcane, and you've got to hit those prongs, and you've got to hammer those prongs and make the jury understand those prongs and have backup evidence and backup experts and backup history, backup medications, backup therapies, all of that. And still, you almost never succeed with an insanity defense. And for Andrea, that was the case. Guilty. Round one. She was convicted of capital murder, and it was a death penalty case. Yeah. But it got overturned. It got overturned. And you want to know why that case got overturned? And this is really just luck on her part, I've got to be honest, that the appellate attorneys saw that the prosecutors had used an episode, I think of Law and Order, and said, you see this episode of Law and Order? She followed it by the script. She saw it on TV and she carried it out. This isn't crazy. This is somebody who saw it and did it. It's right there on the script, black and white. Here, look at it, read it, whatever. Jury believed it. And the appellate attorneys discovered that that episode hadn't yet aired. Oh, can you believe it? Can you believe it? What a difference a detail can make, like a date. Yeah, the episode might have, except that Andrea could never have seen it because it hadn't yet gone on the TV. So out went her trial result, because that evidence was horseshit. And a whole new trial was mounted with a whole new jury. Round two. It happened in 2006, so 20 years ago this year. And this time, that jury of her peers found her not guilty by reason of insanity. And Andrea was committed to a state psychiatric hospital where, my friends, she has been ever since. The parallels between Andrea's case and Lindsay's case are very obvious, but the legal and the factual differences are important, and they really matter. They do. Andrea had extensive documented history of severe postpartum psychiatric illness, hospitalization, suicide attempts, hallucinations, psychosis, all before the deaths of her kids. Lindsay Clancy was seeking treatment, had documented anxiety, insomnia, suicidal ideation, but the prosecutors say, well, she was never diagnosed with postpartum psychosis before January 24th. So again, dates. Andrea's case also unfolded under Texas law. Lindsay, though, she's in Massachusetts, no death penalty. And it's a different standard, for the criminal responsibility. Different jurors, different rational, reasonable people can disagree. And they can be, one man's reasonable is not the other man's reasonable. Massachusetts, Texas. Both cases, though, are going to ask jurors to confront the very same nearly impossible question. How do you determine whether a mother who committed an unthinkable act thrice, Andrea did it 5 times, Lindsay did it 3 times, was she making a criminal choice, right, in her head? Or was she obeying the commands of a profoundly diseased mind? Well, I am so happy that this guy said yes to me. He is one of the attorneys who represented Andrea Yates. His name is Wendell Odom Jr. Huge resume, Google him, trust me, and then get seated for a long read. He's somebody who understands not only how an insanity defense works in a courtroom, but also what it takes to explain severe postpartum mental illness to jurors who may have never heard of it before, or may think it's, hullabaloo. It's not easy. It's like, the OJ jurors had to learn about DNA and they didn't do such a good job of learning it. And honestly, Marsha Clark did a shitty job of teaching it. But these jurors are going to have to look at evidence that is almost too painful to even comprehend. Here's my conversation with Wendell Odom Jr. Hey, this message is sponsored by ZocDoc. I want to ask you something.
This is not your conversation with them. This is an ad read. There he is.
Banfield. Wendell, it is so good to have you on Drop Dead Serious. Thank you for being here. You are the perfect guest. You have lived this life and walked this walk before, slight variations, but give me your general impressions as you look towards the Lindsay Clancy case.
Well, it's deja vu. Her motives, her actions, and the publicity surrounding it, the way the state is accusing her of having premeditation, it's all very, very similar, if not identical, to what had happened 26 years ago with Andrea Yates.
The only thing about Andrea, though, is there wasn't anything to indicate, no planning, no ideas where she could find herself in a moment away from Rusty and do it. Really just it just happens so quickly.
Well, she did it during the only time period she could, because Rusty had gone to work and his mother was supposed to come in and babysit her because of her sickness. And that's when she did it, the only opportunity she had. So in that regards, it is similar. Now she didn't have to plan it like Lindsay did, but she did have to take advantage of the only time that she could have done it. And that was a big argument that the state made as to how, because she reasoned that, therefore she knew that what she was doing would prevent her from being insane.
Makes sense. Just like somebody who shoots someone and runs and hides, it shows that they know something's wrong. Otherwise, why would you be hiding? And, criminal code suggests you have to not know the difference between right and wrong. But with the case of Lindsay Clancy, there seemed to be so much more planning, really strategic planning. It didn't look like somebody was in the middle of an episode. Andrea was without question in the middle of a lot of episodes. And on that particular day, it was acute. But Lindsay was sending out photographs of snowmen and having communications with everyone, and then picked a restaurant a far distance away.
As the psychiatrist explained it to me, and as I understand it, if I believe that someone is aliens are talking to me, and I build a tinfoil teepee with great precision and a lot of reasoning to it, that doesn't make me any less insane or any lack of reality on that particular aspect. A person can be totally lost in reality and in a psychosis, but yet do certain things in order to accomplish a purpose. And that purpose is what you need to look at. Did she do it for altruistic reasons to save the children? Or did she do it to a traditional murder reason? Murder, to revenge, to kill, to take a life. That's the real key to it. A person in a psychosis can reason, and they can plan certain things. That's really not the issue.
Hard to tell a jury of average folk that. I mean, I get it because I've been at this game for, more decades than I care to admit, but a little harder to get that through to the mechanic and the hairdresser and people who've just never walked through criminal procedure before.
Yes, no question about it. The hardest thing for us to have done, and we finally did it in the second trial, is to convince them this is a sickness. And it's just like a heart attack. Someone has a heart attack while driving and they run off the road and kill someone. That's not murder. This is a heart attack. It only occurs to a woman who has given birth, who has a predisposition for a mental illness. And during that time period, there's a biological change that occurs that causes these stressors, that causes them to lose their grasp of reality, have a psychosis, as we say.
Well, I got to say, since I covered the Andrea Yates case, the day it broke, literally was on the air on MSNBC when it broke, 2001. Wow, have we ever come a long way, baby, in understanding mental health? Do you think that's going to really change the metric for Lindsay Clancy in a way that,
I hope so.
For Andrea?
I really hope so. I mean, it changed in the 5 years from our first trial to our second trial. To a large extent because of the press started educating people. But even since then, since we did Andrea Yates, there's been some amazing studies that have gone on. There's a Dr. Cyrano at Baylor College of Medicine who's showing the physiological, the biological changes that occur to a woman after birth that really have, especially certain people, certain women, have a profound effect on them. It's not just hormonal changes, it's whole body changes that occur, and how that can be devastating to someone who has clinical depression, who's bipolar, who's schizophrenic. It can really change the baby blues, which is what I learned when I had my child a jillion years ago, to what we call postpartum depression. It only happens after birth. It only occurs then. that's the stimulus for what's going on.
So you know that there are always naysayers, and it feels to me like this trial could be won or lost, many of them, but this one in particular could be won or lost in jury selection. How critical do you think it is to have the most care and consideration taken to jurors who will understand this sort of new medical knowledge that we've acquired in the last couple decades?
It may be the most important thing. Our first trial, they asked for the death penalty. So we had a jury that was composed only of people who believed in the death, or who could give the death penalty. Because she got life in the first trial, they couldn't have that jury the second time around. But we had a much bigger jury pool, and we had much more sympathetic jurors to our position, which was the postpartum depression and insanity defense. It couldn't be any more significant.
You know, I think Lindsay is facing life, no parole, right? Life in prison
Right.
without parole. But the jurors aren't allowed to know that. I mean, they're typically not told what the sentence, is that
Right.
could result from their decision.
Right.
But they know it can be bad. In Massachusetts, it can't be death, but they know it can be bad. And I always wondered about what goes on with jury nullification, in those jury rooms. Do you think this might be one of those that could actually result in a jury nullified result?
It's very seldom that you have 100% jury nullification. But what can happen is that someone in that jury panel can know that, like, for example, Andrea Yates is still in a mental hospital. And you don't just walk away. There's a whole procedure of taking care of someone who does something like this, putting them in a mental hospital and keeping them for perhaps the rest of her life. I don't know that Andrea Yates will ever come out of that institution. I don't know, quite frankly, whether she really wants to on that matter either. But that's the point. If they have that realization that this isn't a free walk away, that she doesn't get to go home, go to a bar and start having more children, then there can be that, quote, nullification, if you want to call it that. But it certainly eases the verdict for people.
That's a big thing for a lot of people. If they don't understand what not guilty by reason of insanity means, it doesn't mean you walk free. It does mean a commitment. Now, for some, those commitments have been short. For Andrea, I believe your co-counsel, George Parnham, told me in the last couple of years that he visited, and probably still visits if he's capable, Andrea in her facility, and that she did not want to be released. Do you know if that's still the case?
That is correct. I mean, George and I just talked to him today. His wife still goes and visits Andrea, and I kind of maintain contact through her present lawyer that's handling that. And at this point, she's a very shy person and introverted and scared to death to go out in the real world, quite frankly. And it's not like, doesn't have her illnesses as well. So yes, I think that's still the case. I mean, I haven't talked to her recently, but I certainly know that that's the case not too long ago.
Here's a question I never thought I'd ask because I really don't know the answer. And I've never contemplated it in a case, but does Andrea have the right to stay? I mean, what if the doctors determine she is well enough and she's not a danger to herself or others, and they determine it's time for her to go? Does she have the right to say, I want to stay?
No. If in fact it were a no question conclusion, I mean, if all the doctors said, you got to get out of here, you're completely well, then she could leave. It's very unlikely that someone that has a schizophrenia, for example, which the older you get, you never really lose it, would say, well, you're scot-free of mental illness. So that's a difficult question to answer. But there would still have to be a judge that would, in Texas, now different jurisdictions have different rules. There would still have to be a judge that would okay that procedure as well. So I don't know.
In Lindsay Clancy's case, look, I haven't seen, the case that the prosecution is going to present, nor the defense. I've just seen whatever legal filings there. I can't wait to hear. But generally speaking, we know what the narrative is going to be.
Right.
And I see both sides. I see this as being a pitched discussion in that jury room. But what I can't figure out is what she should be doing. In that courtroom, I've covered cases where there were one particular guy, Naveed Haq, was drooling in the courtroom, and the jury said, nope, not buying it. What should her affect be? Like, how should she present in court in order to help her defense help her?
That's hard to say. In Andrea's case, they gave her so much Haldol at the time that she was just sort of numb. So there wasn't really much of a reaction at all. There was one point when we were arguing about photos, and we had these photos inadvertently laid all out in front of us. And all of a sudden, I just hear this gasp from her. And she's actually sees the photos of her children, of her dead children. And there's a reaction. That's the only reaction during the whole trial. So I don't know if Ms. Clancy is still on the degree of antipsychotics that Andrea was during her trials, even her second trial. Her first trial, for sure. We would have been asleep with the amount of drugs she was getting in the first trial. The second trial, she had reached a flat level. She'd gone back to base level, but she still was drugged up during the trial. There's a thin line. I mean, we lawyers play that game all the time. We know the jury's looking at us, so we can communicate to the jury, but we better not let them know that we know they're looking at us.
Yeah. And also looks are deceiving, right? Yes. So I would imagine you've got to counsel, your defendant, how to behave if she's capable of taking that counsel. Yeah. I just don't know quite what you say. You can't suggest, I think you should take drugs. Or
No. Well, no, not really. You shouldn't anyway. No, I mean, it's the old saying in trial lawyers, beware of the smiling juror. If they make contact with you, beware of that. That may be the very person that's going to drive a stake through your heart.
Beware of the smiling juror. I'd never heard that before. Interesting.
So now you have to try to play the game right. We know how to play the game. Our clients, not so much, and certainly one who has some mental issues.
Yeah. What do you think is going to be the biggest piece of evidence or testimony that will be the sticking point for her defense? Like, what's going to be the hurdle for them, the biggest hurdle?
I think you've touched on it, and that is that her knowledge, she knew that what she was doing was illegal, but she believed it was the only thing she could do to save her children.
So he says her knowledge will be the biggest thing against her. Like, I guess her nursing knowledge and knowing what she did was wrong and illegal. It's kind of what I mentioned before and what someone else mentioned before about her being a nurse and knowing better.
A hard sell. And we were able to do it through some religious information that was being fed to Andrea by a kind of a street preacher, that, better you die than let your children go to hell. And they were going to hell because she was so depressed she couldn't discipline them. So those readings and that type of outside influence helped us a great deal. With Miss Clancy, I don't know. I know she's going through the same sort of altruistic thoughts. I need to save my children, but I don't know what type of corroboration there is out there to show what that influence is that's coming into her head.
What do we have here, says Shadow? Super chat from Sweet Caroline and the Flock of Black Sheep. We love you, Jared and Shadow. Well, Shadow says he loves you all too, and I do as well. And Sweet Caroline and the Flock of Black Sheep are always too sweet, very sweet, with all of their support. We wouldn't be here without you all. Isn't that right, Shadow? So Sweet Caroline, for those who don't know, is in the land down under. Sweet Caroline, in the land down under with Nanny Goat. The only representative from Australia we do not have here still is Dorgan. I remember Dorgan. But Sweet Caroline is in a new position at her job, so we're also very curious how Sweet Caroline is doing with that. And hopefully she's doing okay also, because she had lost her uncle a couple weeks ago too. And so she's been in Shadow and I's thoughts and prayers since then too. And I know the Flock of Black Sheep's thoughts and prayers too. So thank you again, Sweet Caroline and the Flock of Black Sheep.
We were able to do that, and that's a difficult thing to do.
Is there a difference between the argument that my client did this because God told her to, or my client did this because the devil was coming for the kids? Is there a difference between those two arguments?
That was an incredible argument we had. The devil told Andrea that she was going to get them, and that she was the devil, and so she had to kill them because the devil was telling her that she was going to get her. Whereas if God would have told her that, then she wouldn't have known her actions were wrong. She would have known they were right. Well, that was the argument that the psychiatrist for the state was making. And we spent a lot of times talking about the absolute ludicrous issue you have of if one psychosis tells you to do something, it's legal, and another psychosis tells you not to do something, it's illegal. That made no sense at all. I think that point we finally drove home in the second trial, that was really sort of a silly argument on the part of the state. But yes, that's what a lot of them tie on to.
Both are completely absurd to the mind, and yet they have different intent and a different knowledge of what's right and wrong. So I was always curious about whether you could get past that. With Lindsay, I wonder if this is a problem, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. At one point, there was a mental health professional who visited Lindsay in her facility and gave her a phone. And I believe she made some kind of communication with her husband, Patrick, and said, and I'm going to paraphrase and probably do it terribly, but that she heard a male voice telling her to do these things. And the prosecutors say, well, that never came up ever before, not in any of your writings or your concerns or your red flag warnings. Is that going to be problematic for her lawyers?
I don't know at what point she said that, but I will tell you this, that it's explained to me, these psychoses are like a comet that's burning in their heads. And as time goes by, you're seeing the tails of the comet, not the head of the comet. Mm-hmm. And a person will try to rationalize certain things they did towards the end when they try to make sense of it. And an example that I was given was a guy was wiping Satan's writing off of the wall of his cell, wiping his wall of the cell. And then later on, when asked about it, so why were you wiping Satan's writing? He says, oh, no, it was dirty. So sometimes when later on in time, as the mind tries to make sense of what doesn't make sense, there can be rationalization put in there. Now, I don't know if that's the timing here or if that's related to that or anything about that, but that could be one explanation for it.
And in Lindsay's case, there were so many warnings. I mean, Lindsay and her husband both did pretty much everything they could have done to seek help, to warn people about the thoughts she was having, to get the medications, take the medications, get the therapy, practice the therapy. And I just wonder, how does that actually play into the criminal code? And how does it play into the jurors, gut?
These always, it seems to me, are situations that, but for a complete failure in about 12 different ways, that these events happen. And that's part of the educational process that needs to be done generally with the public and certainly with the jury in a case like this. They're going to want to say, well, you had that heart attack, but you knew better. You should have got on a diet and you shouldn't have taken too much cholesterol. That's why you had that heart attack when you were driving and ran over someone. Well, that's not true. People don't think out ahead of time that they're going to have a heart attack and run over someone. The same way with this sort of thing. Yes, if it weren't for the psychiatry breaking down, the professionals breaking down, her support system, be it her husband, be it her family, be it the drugs that she was given, the following part of it, none of this would happen. It's difficult from the law's perspective. It doesn't make any difference, but for a jury's perspective, it makes a big difference.
And does it make a huge difference that her husband is going to be a witness for the defense?
Yes. It is very interesting in these cases. If the husband goes in there and is still with the wife, that says a whole lot, even if it's partially his fault, which, I'm not going to jump up and say anything about that, but yes.
Rusty came out, I think that day or even the next day, and fully backed Andrea, and none of us could understand it.
Yeah, no, that shows you that he recognized what the jury in the first trial didn't. This is an illness. This is a recognized illness. And it's one of the few emergencies that you can have in psychiatry, that wherein a life is in danger. And that's what I learned about all this. I had no idea there was this thing called postpartum depression. I had no idea that a woman could go through such physical changes and what it could do to someone that was susceptible to this type of change in her life. Yeah, I mean, the husband will be the first person to know that.
Boy, did you have a baptism by fire.
Well, I learned a lot.
That was a quick curve. Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit ago a moment that I never knew about, when Andrea saw photos of her dead children and had an audible gasp. There will be photos of these 3 children as well. And Andrea's reaction will be replicated with every one of those jurors, I'm sure, if in some way. How damaging, difficult to surmount are the photographs of those victims, those little tiny kids?
Well, that is the state's best evidence. And it's, there's a saying in our business, keep showing the photographs and they'll lose their effect, their gory effect. Oh, they don't. I've been there. I know. They do not lose their effect. And it's just the more you can talk about it from the perspective of it being a clinical delve into the psychiatry of a distorted mind, the better off you are. But that is their case. Their case is that these are little children that are innocents, that she killed them, and their focus will be on that, and then try to say, well, she knew this, she knew that, she did this, she knew that, and to back away from the what I think is the obvious, and that is the psychosis that's the postpartum depression.
In Lindsay's case, it was not the same as Andrea's case. She tried to take her own life in multiple ways. She cut her wrists, she cut her neck, she leapt from the 2nd-story window, she's paraplegic. That has to have a huge impact as well. Like, how would you treat that aspect?
To me, that makes it seem like she knew what she was doing, right? I mean, why would you do that if you didn't realize what you were doing was wrong, or you're trying to avoid consequences or something? Now, again, I'm not exactly sure what the defense's defense is going to be, what a postpartum psychosis defense would be. I'm not sure what they would actually argue, because some of this would seem to get in the way of that. Now, granted, over-medicated for sure, but how does that play a part? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know enough information yet
of this entire set of facts, to get into under the skin, of the jurors and make them understand just how incredibly sick she was.
It's huge. Andrea also had suicidal thoughts that were documented, and did some things that would indicate she was going to take her life, but not like we have in this case. And in this case, that is a huge factor that they can take.
I mean, Lindsay's sitting in a wheelchair, literally, in the courtroom. I mean, right. You can't avoid it.
Right. Well, the whole idea is that I'm going to go, and unless I take my children, I mean, I'm evil. I've done something. It's often religiously related, but I've done something, so I deserve to die. That's part of the psychosis. So it's not strange at all. Andrea.
All right. So he's saying that's a part of the psychosis, wanting to die. Now, is he saying this from a defense attorney's perspective?
Wanted to be executed by the then governor of Texas. She thought was George Bush, even though he was president at the time. She wanted to die. She just wanted to do it by execution because of what the Bible says. But Lindsay had the same thought process. Well, I'm going to die. I need to save my children, or otherwise they're doomed. That's what's so cruel about postpartum depression. It takes a mother's instinct of preservation and turns it upside down.
Yeah, I'll say. It's unfathomable to most mothers
Yeah.
because they haven't experienced it. They just can't wrap their heads around, how this could possibly happen. And yet it happens over and over again, and it is not new.
No, no.
So one of the things that Lindsay did in her hospital bed was very, very quickly ask for a lawyer. That always makes people's spidey senses tingle, and I understand why. Personally, I think it was the smartest thing anybody can ever do. But you can't really make that known to a jury, can you?
No. Now, they may try to work it in as some sort of way that she wasn't really ill, but no, you're not supposed to let that come in to the jury's deliberation.
And is there a sneaky way that you can accidentally ring that bell? And then, of course, the curative as well. You must, disregard that. Nobody ever can.
Well, right, exactly. No, you can't disregard it. And there are sneaky ways you could try to ring that bell. But I assume Mr. Reddington seems to be doing the right things and would prevent that from happening.
Is there anything that, is there anything in your mind that gives you anything other than a coin toss on this trial? Like, are you feeling a certain way based on the facts, based on the road that was plowed by Andrea's case and others? How do you think this case is going to turn out?
Well, I think that even if they find her guilty, the mitigation will be extremely strong so that her punishment would be nothing comparable that it would be otherwise. So I guess I can take some solace in that regards. But I can't ignore the fact that of the number of cases where the insanity defense is used, a very, very, very small percentage of them actually work.
More about mental health, I don't feel the statistics commensurate with that.
Well, that's because most criminals, or a good percentage of criminals, have mental illnesses.
Yeah, I'd say in some respect, maybe all of them.
Yes, well, some people
Varying degrees,
yes.
right? Yeah. Right. Last question, and I understand if you can't really talk about it, but how is Andrea?
She's fine. She's, she's in her world, and she's, like I said, introverted, and she's very excited about the fact that there is an organization out there, the Andrea Yates Association, that helps educate, puts little pamphlets in the doctor's offices, the pediatrician's office, warning them about postpartum depression, and the fact that there's an organization out there, PSI, Postpartum Support, that actually is driving these issues and making them known. She knows that. She's pleased about that.
Doesn't she do some kind of crafts?
She does all kinds of crafts.
Charity?
Yeah.
What did that remind me? Wendell, I remember learning this from George a while ago, and I just have this image in my mind.
She watches Laura's channel.
Yeah, she does Christmas cards at this convention I went to out in LA. She had made aprons, and she crafted these aprons, and they were auctioned, and they went for unbelievable prices. And of course, the money goes to the organization. And she was ecstatic over that. And she made these little, very Midwestern calico type, homey, cute little aprons that she would make. And these people bid on them and bid a lot of money to get these aprons that Andrea Yates made. That she has her moments.
Is she healthy? Is she mentally healthy? Is she coming towards a time in her life where, in fact, she might have to be released?
One of the psychiatrists said, I hope to see her in her old age in some little cottage somewhere else other than in a mental institution, living out her life. But you have to remember, she is tormented and will be for the rest of her life with what she's done. And that's another big argument we made to the jury, that she will never forgive herself for what happened.
How does she actually process it? And I don't know. I truly don't understand what her therapist would have told her. Does she have to avoid thinking about it, or does she have to face it and then just cope?
She has episodes when she slips back.
What do those look like?
I haven't been there. I don't know, but I can't imagine that they would be very dark.
Well, listen, I am so thankful to have a chance to talk to you because, again, you're the guy. You should be right there in second chair helping to pick the jury, if not first chair, for heaven's sake.
Well, I'm glad at my age that I'm not, and I wish them the best, believe me.
Wendell Odom, thank you so much for this.
You bet. Thank you.
My great thanks and undying appreciation to Wendell Odom Jr. for his body of work and what he did on the Andrea Yates cases, plural, and then his insight into what, Lindsay Clancy is likely to face in the coming weeks as we follow this trial. I'll keep you updated into all of them. I just want to let you know this as well. If you or someone you know may be experiencing some of the symptoms of postpartum depression, for instance, they have a recent baby that was born, could be within a year, 2, honestly, and they're really struggling, or you're really struggling. There is help out there. I'm going to give you a phone number and an organization to call: Postpartum Support International, PSI, Postpartum Support International. The helpline is 1-800-944-4773. We'll put it in the link in the description here. 1-800-944-4773, and then choose option 1. Or you can also text the word HELP, HELP, to 1-800-944-4773. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing if you have. Thank you for subscribing.
All right. There's one more I want to check out here, Vinny video. And then we're going to close it down, baby.
On the eve of the biggest trial of this summer on court TV, prosecutors in Massachusetts have dropped some of the charges against Lindsay Clancy. Lindsay Clancy, the mother of 3 children. She took the lives of all of them. She's claiming some level of mental illness, lack of criminal responsibility for this brutal killing of all 3 children. So now some of the charges have been dropped. What does that mean for the upcoming trial? What does the case look like? And why should you have your seatbelt fastened as we get ready for the biggest trial of the summer? I'm Vinny Politan, and this is Vinny After Dark. Strangled to death with exercise bands. It was a brutal, sick case. Brutal. And it's not in question whether or not she did it. She did it. The sole question for this jury will be, should she be held criminally responsible for this? And that's all a result of the mental illness that she is suffering from, or suffered from, or allegedly suffered from, depending upon your perspective, right? So I've got a lot to say about this, but the big headline right now is that prosecutors have dropped 3 of the charges, the strangulation charges, basically saying that they are redundant because it was the strangulation that resulted in the deaths of these 3 little angels. Now, a lot of outrage, right? Because the children are gone. Tons of outrage about that. Prosecutors are very skeptical, though. Very skeptical of this defense, very skeptical of this mother. She allegedly attempted to take her own life afterwards, jumping out of the window. But prosecutors don't believe she actually jumped out of the window. They think she kind of went out the window and then kind of shimmied her way down. But the result of that is she's now in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. So she was impacted by whatever she did, whether she was trying to take her own life or whether she was just trying to make it look like she was taking her own life. So we get ready. This trial coming up later this month. It's going to take about 4 to 6 weeks. This will consume the true crime community this summer. So you need to know a little bit of the background here. And that's what I'm going to do in this video, go through some of the background. We got through the headline. They dropped the charges, but the most serious charges are still standing. This is prosecutors getting ready now to try this case. Now, the defense here is lack of criminal responsibility, mental illness. You know, we call it legal insanity. I want you to understand this, and this is an important concept to understand when we talk about criminal defendants who suffer from mental illness. Because I would argue that most of them do to some degree and to some level. Some are just evil, right? But there's a lot of them that do suffer from some level of mental illness. But mental illness and legal insanity, mental illness and criminal responsibility are two different things. Mental illness is like a medical diagnosis, right? That a psychiatrist or psychologist will make, right? There's something wrong with
And yeah, wow, sweet Caroline, Miss Amanda, everyone. That's what a case like this does. It brings awareness to the situation, and maybe that's something people can take from the case. It's an opportunity to learn about this kind of dynamic, and maybe, just maybe, future kids will be saved.
You're mentally ill. You need help. You are suffering from some level that makes you not who you normally are, right? But this is the important distinction between mental illness is really in the medical field. Legal insanity, criminal responsibility, we're talking about a legal standard. Just because you are mentally ill and engage in criminal behavior does not become an automatic defense.
Right. I mean, mental illness is not an automatic defense. I think you look at the people in prison, probably a very high percentage have some kind of personality disorder / conduct disorder. That's without question. But those disorders are not insanity worthy. The only ones that are the ones where you don't know the nature of what you did, or you don't know right from wrong. That's where you can get insanity. And that's where this case is interesting, because I have a feeling postpartum, they might have a little bit of a different criteria for how that would look. Now, again, that's where the Andrea Yates case would come into play. How did they prove it in her case? The other COVID case with, what was it called? Delicious? Is that her name? Bland? It's wild that she got it too. She got insanity from that. That's wild. But it's going to be interesting.
Because the standard, the legal standard isn't, are you mentally ill? The legal standard is, do you appreciate the wrongfulness of the actions that you are undertaking? To have a criminal mind, to have the mens rea, to be criminally responsible for something, you have to know what you're doing is wrong. That's really the test. If you don't know what you're doing is wrong, then there is an avenue where you are not necessarily criminally responsible for your actions. The court can still retain some level
Bland. I just looked it up too. Wow. Precious Bland.
Control over you as being someone found legally insane. But you're not going to end up in a prison or a jail. You're going to end up in some institution, inpatient, outpatient, whatever. So understanding that is important. Extremely important. And the mental state at the time of trial is irrelevant, is completely irrelevant to the case. It's all about your mental state at the time of the offense. Extremely important. So prosecutors in this case believe this was premeditated and planned. She knew what she was doing was wrong, and she was going to hide it from her husband. And that is the evidence that she knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew what she was doing was wrong. Okay? And I want to take a look at the timeline here, because I think the timeline is significant and will be a big part of the prosecution case. Big part of the prosecution case. So at 4:02 p.m. on the day that these three angels were taken, Lindsay Clancy searches kids' Miralax on her cell phone. Okay, so she's doing these searches. So she knows what she's doing, right? She's searching something. 11 minutes later, 4:13, she searches takeout 3V. Okay, so she's searching takeout food for dinner that night at a place called 3V, but this is the important part, uses Apple Maps to calculate the travel time to the restaurant. Now, why is that important? Prosecutor's going to say she needs enough time to commit these crimes. So she wants to make sure that she gets takeout from a place that will get her husband out of the house for a long enough period of time for her to engage in this criminal behavior and take the lives of her 3 children. Now, is there an innocent explanation for this? Maybe. But if you are mentally ill, how are you able to kind of do all this stuff, right? It seems like she is functioning very well at this moment. 4:47 p.m. Again, she's doing all this ahead of time, right? 4:47 p.m. She searches the CVS website and calls the store in Kingston to verify that they have the children's Miralax in stock. That's interesting. Like, she's getting something for the children. If she's planning on taking their lives, why is she doing this? Well, prosecutors will say it's to get her husband out of the house, to give him a series of errands to engage in. So he's gone for a longer period of time so she can do what she needs to do. 4:53. Now she texts her husband, Patrick, asking to order takeout from 3V. He agrees, and then they discuss the menu options. What do you want to get for dinner tonight? Let's talk about it. Okay, we're going back and forth about the dinner options. Then at 5:10, she calls 3V to place the order under her husband's name. So now the order is in, and according to prosecutors, again, because they're really going to rely on this timeline, the plan is now fully in effect. The premeditation, the searching on the phone, the timing out of how long it takes, and now she's going to go through with her plan. 5:15, she text messages her husband regarding the medication, prompting him to leave the house and begin to run those errands. 5:32, surveillance video captures Patrick at the CVS on Summer Street. So she sent him out there, go get the Miralax. 5:32, he's getting it. 5:33, Patrick calls Lindsay. The call goes unanswered. We know why, right? 5:34, though, Lindsay then calls Patrick back. And the 14-second call confirms the medication details. Now, if she's in the middle of all of this and she's able to get on the phone and everything's all right here, is she in this delusional, frenzied state? Or isn't she in the middle of committing a horrific crime? Interesting question, right? And the prosecutors will say, how on earth could she be so calm, cool, and collected on the phone in the middle of doing this? No indication that she's in the midst of some mind-altering delusion that has her detached from reality, where she cannot appreciate the wrongfulness for what she's doing, or she can't stop herself from doing it. This irresistible impulse where she cannot control this. I just can't stop myself from doing this. I have to do this. Yet she's able to do that phone call. No indication that anything is wrong on Patrick's end. 5:54, Patrick picks up the food from 3V and drives home. So you've got this long time period where he's away from the house. At 6:09, he arrives home, and so heartbreaking on so many levels. This family, gone. And then Patrick calls 911, finds his children in the basement, finds his wife, the blood, the window, the poor little kids, all of that. Okay, that's the prosecution. The prosecution case here is not super complicated. The case begins to get complicated when it shifts to the defense. And I think the way this will play out in the courtroom over the course of these 4 to 6 weeks is prosecutors will put in the case to prove what she did. Then the defense will come back with their lack of criminal responsibility, whether it's irresistible impulse, she could not control, she couldn't stop herself from doing it, or she didn't appreciate the wrongfulness of what she was doing. And then prosecutors will come back to try to rebut those arguments in their case. Now, here's the difference. Like a lot of times when we have cases like this, where it's some sort of mental disease or defect, which is kind of like the language we use in the criminal justice world, is that many times it's like it's a defense, but I call it like a fugazi defense. Like there's nothing else. Like the person is caught red-handed doing whatever they did, and they're just going to claim insanity and pull it out of thin air. And there's no history of mental illness to speak of. And they go, oh, ADHD, this, we've seen it a million times. Sometimes this type of defense is reserved for people because they have no other defense. That's kind of the case here because she did it. It's her. There's no other person you're going to point the finger at. However, what she has, two things that you are going to see and you are going to experience this summer during this trial. She has two things. She has a documented history of mental illness, one, and two, she has one of the most compelling criminal defense attorneys you're ever going to hear inside of a courtroom. Trust me on this. I've seen him at work. He can convince you of, he takes anything as bizarre as it may be and makes it sound reasonable. That's the best way I can explain it. So when it's time for him to make his arguments, when it's time for him to do his cross-examination, everything else, we know where the defense is going with this. He's going to make it sound very reasonable. Now, you may not accept it, you may not believe it, but you'll have to at least pause for a moment and say, he's kind of making sense here. Kevin Reddington's his name. He's been doing it for years up in Massachusetts. I mean, he's that good. He's that good. That's why this case is, this is going to be a tough case for prosecutors. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a tough case for prosecutors. Because anything the prosecutors are putting out there in their cases.
How did they detain Reddington? Where's the money coming from? Because you would think that guy is an expensive attorney, no?
Defense isn't really fighting it so much. It's not like, oh, she didn't do it. But it's all about what's going on between her ears. So, 3 children. So the first 2, there is some indication that she may have suffered some postpartum issues, but it was not bad. She did some therapy, some exercise, a little bit of meditation, and she was able to handle it, right? She was able to handle it. But following the birth of her 3rd child, the baby, the symptoms, and this is documented. Again, this is not made up. They're not pulling it out of thin air. This is stuff that actually happened. Her symptoms increased in severity. Anxiety, you're talking about insomnia, exhaustion, and hearing voices. She was getting help for this. Like, this didn't happen in a vacuum. It's not made up after the fact. Like, as it's happening, she's attempting to get help for it. And I think that's going to be an important factor in all of this, right? If someone's suffering from some level of mental illness, but they really don't do anything about it, I think a jury is less inclined to say those words, not guilty, right? But if someone's trying to help themselves and is really like battling these demons, the jury might be more likely to give you a break. And when I say give you a break, like, understand that you're mentally ill, you didn't know what you're doing, you love your children, but you had either this irresistible impulse or you didn't appreciate the wrongfulness of what you were doing, the results of what you were doing. And the other part here that is going to help this defendant is her husband, Patrick. Like, he's there all along. He knows that she's suffering. He knows about these issues that she's dealing with. And he's been supportive of her. I mean, if there's one person that is more impacted by this than anyone, obviously the 3 children first, but after the 3 children, if anyone's impacted, it's him. And he's been supportive.
I mean, that will probably help. It'll probably help that he's supportive.
Now, timing is important here. Like I've seen cases where there's mental illness, but
And I
it's
should
like
clarify, it will help Lindsay in the defense, I think. Although Miss Amanda did say that he is also the first witness by the prosecution, too.
years ago, or it's very mild. That's not the case here. This is close in time to when all this was happening. In December of 2022, just, a couple of months before all this is happening, Patrick, the husband, reported that Lindsay requested to be hospitalized due to her mental health concerns, even though she didn't receive a more severe diagnosis at the time. So the doctor's saying, well, yes, I think she herself is saying, please get me help. I need help. January 1st, 2023, she was admitted to McLean Hospital for an inpatient psychiatric program, but was discharged after 5 days. So you've got someone seeking help, someone puts themselves into a psychiatric hospital. This is so rare. You don't see this in these types of cases. Usually it's, they suffered from a little, anxiety.
So it seems like the hospitals and the doctors and the nurses there, it sure seems like they dropped the ball. And between them and the people prescribing her all these medications, I think there's some culpability in all of those places, honestly. So there's 2 psychiatrists prescribing her these things and these hospitals. I mean, you would think they'd check her prescription record too to say, you know what? Do you really need to be taking 3 benzos, 3 sleeping medications, 3 antidepressants, multiple mood stabilizers / antipsychotics? It's actually even more than 3 antidepressants, like 4 or 5. And 4 or 5 anti-anxieties, 3 of them benzos. I mean, that just seems careless. Careless.
10 years ago. No, this is like right before all this is happening. She's trying to get help, which is why, again, this is not an easy case for prosecutors. Usually when 3 children are brutally taken, it's an easy case. You've got sympathetic victims.
Also, Shadow and I are going to send some good vibes to Crisscross because undergoing chemo. So the flock of black sheep should do the same. Wish him some good vibes and some healing energy.
You've got some sort of a monster, a villain, and some may very well see her this way. And the jury may, in the end, do this as well. But there is a separate narrative that this jury is going to hear about a woman that's suffering, that a woman that's seeking help, knows she has problems, acknowledges it, and is reaching out for help. Then there's the other part of this, the medication history. There's a civil lawsuit that's been filed by Patrick Clancy against the doctors, blaming them for this. So they got a place to point the finger. They're going to point the finger right at the doctors. You didn't do your jobs. They didn't do their jobs. They were prescribing her all this different medication, 12 different medications. She had an adverse reaction, and this is the result of it. This is a woman who is seeking help. This is a woman who knew there was a problem and the doctors made it worse. That's what you're going to hear.
I'd be very curious to hear the hospital side of the story and these two psychiatrists. I would say, what do you guys have to say for yourselves? That's what I'd be curious about.
But trust me, it's going to be a lot more compelling than the way I just argued it. This is a tough case for prosecutors. This is a case that I believe the true crime community is going to react to it. There's going to be a split. There's going to be folks who feel bad for this woman. And there's going to be a whole bunch of folks who are like, come on, give me a break. Those are your own children. How could you do that? But historically on court TV, we know this type of defense, rarely successful, but when it is, it's usually a mother with a whole bunch of kids.
Andrea Yates, Precious Bland.
So as we get ready for this trial this summer, and it's starting soon, keep an open mind. But it's difficult when you talk about what happened to these children. But we've got to examine and understand the big picture here. And these are tough cases for our system of justice, right? Because of the to be criminally responsible, you've got to have that responsibility in your mind. Like the state of mind is so important in our system of justice. It's often the difference between a top charge, a lesser charge, or a not guilty. So the defense is going for a not guilty in this case. That's what they're going for. I mean, the jury may have the option for a lesser charge, maybe not. We won't know till the end of the trial. But in a case where 3 children are brutally taken the way they were, and evidence that a mother planned it and plotted it, it's tough to have them say not guilty. But just you wait. Wait until you see what you see and what you hear inside the courtroom during this trial. This one, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a battle of the experts. It's going to be, and from my perspective, this is the type of case that a jury needs to decide. A jury should decide this. Like, at what point do we hold someone who is suffering from mental illness criminally responsible? Like I said, you can be mentally ill and still be held criminally responsible.
And there's an argument that some of the doctors and psychiatrists could bear some of the responsibility here too, by the way. There's probably massive rules and laws that prevent that from happening unless the situation's like extremely drastic. But one could argue maybe this applies. Maybe this is drastic enough.
In this case, I don't think there's any question that she was suffering from some level of mental illness. It's really the degree and what impact it had on her state of mind that will be the focus of this trial. All right, folks, make sure that you like and subscribe, right? You can check out my show, Vinnie Politan Investigates, every night on Court TV at 8 o'clock. It also posts on Court TV's YouTube channel. So make sure you go over to Court TV's YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed, and you can check out.
All right. So, of course, this is Vinnie Politan. How do you pronounce his name? Vinnie Politan. That's his name. All right. Now I'm getting tired. So that's about enough, I think, for the night on Lindsay Clancy. Certainly not a cut and dry case, but I'm still waiting to hear more. I'd like to hear more about the defense, because it kind of seems like even in the Andrea Yates case, they make it seem like the postpartum case is a little bit different than a normal pleading insanity case. It seems to me. Now, I'm no expert. I'm no expert on postpartum. I'm no expert on how Andrea Yates got that conviction of, or was able to get away with not guilty by reason of insanity. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I'm going to wait and see, because what do they say? They say fools rush in. You don't rush to judgment. You let things unfold. Takes a little bit of patience, but it's worth it. And I'm going to let the things unfold in this case. Apparently, the trial starts on Monday. We'll keep our eyes open for that. We also might take a little peek at the Nolan Wells case tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see. Or look into some more Andrea Yates, how she got found not guilty. Or even Precious Bland, how she got found not guilty by reason of insanity for getting COVID. Could you believe it? That's insane. That's speaking of insane, that's insane. So yes, Shadow and I want to wish you all a good night, a great night for Sweet Caroline. Wow. Janine, I always call Janine Jane, and she doesn't get upset at me. But I guess I should, everyone else calls her Janine, so I should say her name correctly. Miss Amanda, Someway, Truth Seeker, Dana, Autumn, Jackie, Crisscross, Someway, Sweet Caroline, Dana, Wendy, Bethany. Thank you to the mods that were here. You too, wow. Thank you for all the support, everyone too. I know Janine was like, Jared always calls me Jane, but I'll let him slide with it. It's probably what she thinks. But you tell me if you prefer Janine over Jane, you let me know. Owl Spirit indeed, Shadow salutes you. Good night there, Autumn. Woman, you have a great night too there, woman like that. Regina, have a great night. Tim, have a great night. You too, D, have a great night. And we'll be seeing you all tomorrow, no doubt. Be looking out for that Dr. Salerno, Dr. Lieberman interview. I'll be uploading that for Saturday. All right, folks. Till next time. Shadow says good night too.